I was making my way to the area of the compound the Fury Courts was restricted to, determined to speak with Sanan-san. I just really needed to talk to him about that night. Sanan-san! I spotted him alone in the hallway and I called out to catch his attention.
雪村くん、どうしたんです？こんなところに来て。
My appearance seemed to have flustered him. Toward me quickly. What? Toward me quickly? I feel like that should be turned to me quickly, maybe. Eyes scanning in every direction.
以前羅刹に襲われたことを忘れたわけでもないでしょう。
Oh, he's worried.
ここに一人で来てはいけないと言われているはずです。
I'm sorry, but I really needed to talk with you. To speak with you. He must have caught something from the tone of my voice, because he paused and thought for a moment. The words, when they came, were slow and deliberate.
雪村くん、申し訳ないのですが、ここではお話できません。彼は不安定な状態ですし、私にも仕事がありますから。
You're right. I'm sorry to have bothered you. Of course he would be busy. I felt horrible for not realizing before coming. I bowed to excuse myself. With a strained laugh, he leaned in and whispered,
後で君の部屋に向かいます。詳しい話はその時にしましょう。
Speechless, I could only nod. I returned to my room. After an indeterminate time, as if hours had passed when it likely wasn't very long, I heard a soft voice outside my door. We settled inside my room and Sanan-san began to speak.
雪村くんが私に聞きたいのは東堂くんの話ですね。
はい。
彼の体が落ち着くまで合わせることはできません。
His voice was matter of fact and his expression broke no argument.
羅刹に作り変えられる過程で彼は拒否反応を起こしています。そんな姿を見られたいとは誰も思わないでしょうから。
I understand.
君も複雑でしょうが、状況がどうあれ落ち水を飲むと決断したのは彼自身です。
Oh, okay, wait, so in this route, reading this correctly, both Hesuke and Okita took the water of life. Huh. That didn't happen before? Is that a mistake? His tone had lost its flatness. Now it was almost as if he was trying to convince me.
重傷を負った東堂君は死にたくないという思いだけで落ち水に手を伸ばしました。彼とは付き合いも長いですし、命を取り留めてくれたことは私も嬉しく思っていますが、彼はこの選択がもたらす結末に悩まされることになるでしょう。
His brow wrinkled and his eyes lowered. I could see clear concern for Hesuke on his face. He was truly worried about him. Sanan-san blinked as if just remembering I was there, and then rushed to reassure me.
経過は順調です。あまり心配しないでくださいね。
はい。The words were kind, though the tone was cold and clinical. It was as if he was building a wall between us, pushing me away. He would have never done anything like that before. His demeanor seemed colder now, crueler.
しかし因果なものですね。羅刹になるのは私だけで十分間に合っていたはずですが。
The self-derision and pain that surfaced in his laugh tone tore at my heart. His voice lowered to a mumble.
私はすべて受け入れる覚悟で羅刹となる道を選びました。自分が変わっていくことさえ怖いと思うことはありません。けれどできることなら彼まで苦しめたくなかった。
Sanan-san. His head turned away, hiding his face, but not before I saw a myriad of conflicting emotions, like anger, even sadness, appear. After a moment, Sanan-san squared up his shoulders and brought his head up.
しかしながら彼が羅刹になった事実は変わりません。羅刹体がほぼ壊滅している現状、彼の力には大きな意味がある。私は今後彼を生きた大使としてではなく羅刹として扱うでしょう。
The smile he gave me was pleasant enough, if not for the edge that was just a little off.
恨んでくれて結構ですよ。これは非道な行いですから。
The cruel twist to his words made me sad. I will leave him to you. I turned to Sanan-san and bowed. I spoke from my heart. I will leave him in your hands. You became a fury first. When their suffering begins, I'm sure you are the only person they can rely on. So... Sanan-san gave a troubled sigh.
君も変わった人ですね。未だに私を信用するとは。
But I knew that he was still the same inside. He hadn't changed at all. Seeing him use the powers of the Fury so often and relying on them so heavily made me frightened. But I hadn't forgotten who he really was. The words I wanted to say to tell him that it wouldn't come out. The words I wanted to say to tell him that wouldn't come out regardless of how hard I tried. Sanan-san didn't notice and continued speaking.
気遣わせてしまったお詫びに私もできることはしましょう。自分が羅刹であることを彼が受け入れられるかどうか見守っていくと約束しますよ。
Sanan-san, thank you very much. All the strain was gone from Sanan-san's face. Our agreement seemed to bring him peace.
ではおやすみなさい、雪村君。遅い時間に長々失礼しました。
Sanan-san. He turned to leave, but paused at the threshold. When I called out to him, he glanced back at me. It's been very cold lately. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Have you been sleeping well? I know a lot of things are going on right now, so you might not be resting. Well... He raised an eyebrow. Your face has been kind of frightening lately, and every time I saw him, it looked like he was silently suffering, and I couldn't help but feel anxious for him. Sighing, he padded over to me, closing the distance between us so much that the fabric of his sleeve brushed my arm. Sanan-san? His eyes caught and held mine. He leaned down so we were the same height, his face filling my vision. The look in his eyes was soft.
君は自分のことで手一杯なくせに人の痛みを察してしまうんですね。私はいい大人なのですから、体調を崩して苦しんだとしてもそれは自己責任なんですよ。
That may be true, but that doesn't mean I'm not still worried about you. I clenched my fist, raised my chin, and stared. He was trying to pacify me, but I wouldn't let him. His face grew more troubled, and a sigh spilled from his lips.
私は雪村くんの優しさが時として心配になります。私でしたら大丈夫ですよ。どうか安心してください。
The tone of his voice indicated that he'd said the final word. It was pointless to argue anymore. Okay. Reluctantly, I nodded and he stepped back, breaking off our eye contact. He smiled mysteriously and chuckled under his breath.
今夜は君につられて優しくなりすぎました。
What does that mean? He chuckled. His chuckle bubbled up into a full laugh. His words when he spoke were deliberately evasive.
他人に情が移ってしまえば何かと困るものですからね。今度こそおやすみなさい。良い夢が見られますよ。
He swiftly walked off before I could stop him. I didn't know what to think. I hadn't spent enough time with him to accurately see his true face behind the slippery words he liked to use. But I think I can trust him. Some of the things he said and did frightened me more than I wanted to admit, but he was a good, kind person at heart. I wanted to believe that, so I decided to hold on to my faith in him and not doubt the course of action he chose to follow. I should have been thinking about what dangers the future held in store for us, but instead, I felt calm. (1867) December. December 1867. Scarcely a month had passed since Abura no Koji. Okay, yep. We can skip this. We can also skip...
部屋にいてくれましたか?
Well, I was gonna say we could skip this, but this involves Sanan-san, and I'm like, does anything change? Or is this like that one scene that I thought would change, but it was kept intact? But we're gonna find out. Sanan-san walked into my room without saying anything.
助かりますよ。昼間外に出られると探しに行けませんからね。
Sanan-san? But it's daytime. Are you sure you're all right?
ええ。とてもいい考えが浮かんだもので、一刻も早く君に知らせたくて。
His eyes glittered with something, and even though he was smiling, I could feel the fingers of dread begin to poke at the base of my spine. Why me? Wouldn't you want to tell Kondo-san or Hijikata-san instead?
君でなければダメなのです。私の考えを聞いていただけますね。
Although he asked in the form of a question, his choice of words made it seem far from letting me make a choice. Sanan started to talk without waiting for my answer.
雪村君、あなたは鬼の一族だとあの千姫という女性が言っていましたね。そして鬼という生き物は筋力も胆力も人間よりはるかに優れている。それは先日豚書を襲撃した鬼たちの力を思い起こすまでもないことです。
Well, I understand that, but what was Sanan trying to get at? My heart started to pound, anticipating bad news.
人をはるかに凌駕する力を持つ鬼。その鬼の体に流れる血はやはり人の血よりも強い力を持っているのではないでしょうか。あるいは羅刹の狂気を完全に抑える力があるかもしれません。
I didn't know how the water of life worked, but Sanan's explanation seemed logical. But even if it was a bit manic, how can you know that for sure?
自らが羅刹となる前から、そして羅刹となってからも、この新選組で薬についてずっと研究をしてきたのは私です。落ち水の正体が一体何であるのかは私にも未だに分かりませんが、生き血ではないかと推測しています。おそらく人ではない何者かの。もしかすると異国にもあなた方鬼のような生き物がいるのかもしれませんね。
So, Sanan drew closer to me without making a sound.
少なくとも試してみる価値はあるはずです。あなたの存在で我々羅刹隊、いや新選組隊士全員を救うことができるのかもしれないのですよ。
待って。Sanan's eyes had grown painfully sharp, and I almost thought I could hear the barest edge of madness in his voice.
さあ。
Calmly, he drew his sword from its scabbard. There was no madness or bloodlust to his movements, and that only made them all the more terrifying.
怖がる必要はありませんよ。あなたを殺すつもりはありません。ただほんの少しその血を分けてもらえるだけで良いのです。
I took a step back, too. Sanan's and his words came closer. He lifted it, and the steel blade shimmered in the light. Then all of a sudden, just then...
おい、サンナンさん、何してやがる!
Hijikata had burst into the room. Then...
これ一体どういうことだ? あんたともあろう人が豚書の中で刀を抜くなんざ気でも触れたか?
Hijikata-san!
ああ、土方君、ちょうどよかった。君も手伝ってくれませんか？我々に協力してもらえるよう、何としても彼女を説得しなくては。
With calm purpose, he stepped between Sanan and me.
刀を収めてくれ。私の闘争を許さず、たとえ幹部だろうと、局中ハットは絶対だろう。
Sanan glared at Hijikata-san begrudgingly for several moments, but he soon turned away and sheathed his sword.
で、一体何があったんだ? 雪村が何かやらかしたのか?
隊のため、羅刹の狂気を抑える方法を探っていたのです。
そのためにこいつを切ろうとしてたってことか。
殺すつもりはありませんよ。血を分けてもらおうと思っただけです。先日の戦いで我々は多くの羅刹を失いました。 羅刹ではない一般の大使も同じく、今いる羅刹やこれから羅刹となるものをより有効に活用するには、何としても狂気を抑える術を見出しておかなくてはなりません。聡明な君ならば理解できると思いますが。
さっきも言ったじゃねえか。新選組において死闘は厳禁だ。どんな理由があろうと大使同士の流血沙汰なんざ許すわけにはいかねえ。
雪村君は大使ではありませんが。
大使じゃねえがずっとここにいるんだ。似たようなもんだろうが。
They continued to stare for a while, neither willing to budge on the matter at hand. Sanan's side.
相変わらず君は優しすぎますね。いいでしょう。ここは引いてあげます。ですが覚えておいてください。もしこのまま落ち水の副作用を抑える術が見つからなければ、新たに羅刹となった東堂君も血に狂って苦しむこととなるのですよ。
Only after I heard his footsteps fade away down the hall did I begin to breathe again. Now we can skip. It should be I'll stay here. Yeah, I'll stay here.
なん
Oh, we got this scene.
え、
We're skipping! We're skipping! Almost. The Shinsengumi, once solid, now wavered. What would happen to them? What would happen to the Fury Corps? Men were forced to watch as their friends became the undead monsters known as Furies. Was it any wonder that they found themselves conflicted or that tempers began to rise? Several days later, the order was given to begin the imperial restoration. The emperor would be restored to power and his court would once again rule the nation. The position of shogun would be abolished, and Kyo's military and judiciary commissioner positions would be eliminated. All that the Shinsengumi had fought for and believed in was falling to pieces. Okay, now we're on chapter 5.